Aha, well, part 23 then. So what we did last time is we created, well, sort of finished off really the actual control panel. So this is how the control panel will look in the released version, if you like, of this database. All the buttons are there. So we quickly recap, more for myself than anything else. These ones with the huge, great big borders, these buttons here, all three of them, we've already dealt with. So to sort of finish this off, we're just going to work through the rest from the top left going right and down. So the first one we come across is the Restock button. And unfortunately, as luck would have it, this is going to be the most complicated of all the rest of these left to do. So let's power through it. So the idea basically is with the Restock button, when we buy a new bottle of a liquid, if we had that liquid before, well, let's say we didn't have that ingredient before, we would create a new ingredient and then we would restock it. If we did already have that ingredient before, we would just pick it from the list. Let's say we bought a new bottle of Berry Crunch. We hit the Restock button and it gives us a relatively simple form to fill out, giving the details of that new bottle we bought, i.e. how much we bought, what the price was, where we got it from, that sort of stuff. So yeah, we're going to need a form, a Restock form, and I'm going to quickly create that now. So here's our new form in design view. I literally just created a form from the table. A few of these we're not going to need this is obviously all the fields from the stock table. We're not going to need some of these in the Restock form. For example, we're not going to have to say the stock is empty in the Restock form. And we can get rid of used quantity and remaining quantity because, well, that's not really relevant. So what we're left with is, yeah, probably all valid stuff. Now, some of this, for example, well, the stock ID is going to be created automatically. The stock ingredient ID we already theoretically know because we've already selected the ingredient we want to restock. So we'll need to pass that from the control panel over here. So we've got that. Then as we've got that, we can pick out the ingredient name. We can calculate an order ID. Obviously, we'll just pre-populate with today's date. So that really only leaves us to fill out a supplier, the quantity we bought, the price. The stock price per unit is fairly easy to calculate because we've got a quantity and we've got a price. And the note, well, yeah, that's just text. So there's really only a handful of things that we need to fill out in this form, but some of them need to be created automatically. And of course, that's going to need a bit of code. So I'm going to do that now. Righto, so the first thing that we're going to need to do when this Restock form opens is to make sure that the ID of the ingredient we want to restock has been passed. Otherwise, we can't do much. So yeah, in the open event handler, we're basically checking to see if there are arguments, and if there are no arguments, then we pop up a message box saying no ingredient passed, and we cancel the open event, which will then bounce back to the button or the form on which we clicked the button to open this form, and yeah, it will pass this as an error back. So we need to trap that error. So let's have a look at that a minute. So here's the control panel. And if we go into design view, click the Restock button, open the code, you can see, ignoring all this stuff for a minute, this is the actual line which opens our form. So it's the same old do command open form, the name of the form, the mode we're putting it in, and the argument we're passing is ing combo value. Now ing combo is that, and the combo value is the ID, as that is the first part of the query, and the bound column is 1. So that's what will get passed over to the form we create. Now, if we cancel, or not if we cancel it, if the form opening it cancels it for some bizarre reason, we need to be able to handle that, and it'll bounce back to somewhere around here as an error. So we need to put in our own little error handler, which we've done here, load cancel handler. And we say that if this fails, which it will if the form we're opening decides to not open, then basically do this bit down here, and it's just going to pop up another message box saying you didn't pick an ingredient, and close that down, and we'll be left with the same old control panel, and yeah, no harm, no foul, as they say. So let's take away all of these unneeded lines. We'll close that. We shall close this, yes. And let's have a look at what else we have in here. So we have covered that bit there. If it does go ahead and open, then the next thing that's going to happen is the onload handler will trigger. And effectively what we're saying is, well, we know that we've already got the arguments because otherwise it wouldn't have got to this stage. So we'll put that into a variable called required ingredient ID. And as it might not be a new record and we need it always to be a new record, we'll test to make sure it's not already a new record. And if it isn't, then create a new record. For now, we just simply update the stock ingredient ID field value with the ingredient ID that was passed. And that is this little box here. So that'll do for a second. Let's close the code window. Let's close this form, save it, open up the control panel. Let's see what happens if we don't select an ingredient and click the Restock button. Well, no ingredient passed. You didn't pick an ingredient. Okay, so let's pick an ingredient. Let's do apple Fuji. Click Restock. The Restock form opens. It's given us the next incremental stock ID, which we don't really bother with. We can see that the ingredient ID that we wanted, which is Fuji Apple, is number 24. And that's all it's done. It's filled out these zeros where they got default values in the database. But that's all it's done. So we need it now to go away, find out the information for ingredient ID 24, grab out the old ingredient name, and yeah, I think that's about it actually. Oh, we can do some calculations for these other bits and pieces. So I'll do the code for that and get back to you. Okay, here we go. So this is where we got to last time, where it just chucked in the old requested ingredient ID. I've now then just put the rest of what I want to do here in a separate subroutine, and we're just calling that subroutine. So once it gets to the end, calls that subroutine and it passes over the requested ingredient ID as an integer. Then when the subroutine here opens up, we basically got a few definitions up there. The first thing we're going to do is basically look up from the ingredients table the ingredient name. By taking this requested ingredient ID, we can look up that specific ingredient name, and then we'll populate that into our form where ingredient name needs to be shown. We'll then need to go and dig around in the stock table because we need the stock order ID populated for us automatically. And the way that we're going to do that is basically just find the last stock order ID that was used and add 1 to it. So it's going to go into the stock table, grab the stock order. It's going to, yeah, this is a little bit of a weird thing in, well, I don't know what it's in VBA, I guess, where it doesn't know how many records have been returned into a record set until you move through all of them. I don't know why, but it's just an oddity of VBA or something. So you basically have to move through all the records to the last one and then move back to the first one, and then record count works. So we now know how many records there are. If there are more than 0, then basically this new stock order ID value here is going to equal the last stock order ID plus 1, as I said. So then else if it wasn't greater than 0, then it's probably 0, which means we haven't added any yet. So this is going to be a one-time thing, but we need to deal we need to deal with it. So else it's going to equal 1, and yeah, we populate that into there. And then the last thing we're going to do is populate the stock purchase date value with today's date. So we'll close that, and we'll close that, and we'll save it, and we shall do Apple Fuji again. Click the Restock button, and you can see that it's given us a new stock ID, just incrementing. It's giving us the ingredient ID we passed, 24, and it's gone into the ingredient table and found out that that is Apple Fuji, which is exactly right. It's gone into the stock table and it's discovered the last stock order number we used was 15, and it's added 1 to that for our new stock order. and it's put today's date in as the stock purchase date, which will leave us with stock supplier we need to fill out obviously manually, so we just type that in there. Quantity we obviously fill out manually, so we're going to type that in there. Price we're going to fill out manually, so we type that in there. But we want it to calculate this stock price per unit because, well, we don't need to work that out ourselves because it's got both parts of that equation that it needs, so it can work it out for us. So I'm going to write that bit of code in now, and actually, aside from a couple of buttons, that'll be this form done, so I'll get back. Ooh, so yeah, done a few changes. Most obvious ones being I've added an abort button and a close button, which we'll get back to in a minute. But I have also added to both the stock quantity and the stock price an after update handler. So basically when we type something new into there or new into there, these handlers will be triggered. And if we have a look at that code, essentially they are just both, and here they are, the after update for the purchase quantity and the after update for the price. Both call in the same subroutine called JG count price per. And here is that old little subroutine called JG count price per. And it's basically just doing a little bit of math. It's to, figuring out how much it is by dividing one by the other. That is pretty simple, so we don't need to go into that. The other thing that we've got is these abort and close. Now these are pretty simple little buttons, and so I've already created the code for those. And if we have a look at that, let's remove this massive amount of unnecessary white space. So the abort button just undoes everything that we've done on there and closes it, so that won't save a new restock or whatever. It just undoes everything we've done. It's nice and simple, only one table we're dealing with. So me undo works fine. Close it. The close button, well, it just skips the me undo bit and closes it. So any changes we've made will be saved in this case and won't be saved in that case. And that, by and large, and if we close it and save it, open it up again, close, is pretty much working. So if we add now, well, no, let's do a different one actually. Let's pick something. Fruit circles. Let's do a restock on fruit circles. So we've got all of that. We'll just say that the supplier was man and we bought, let's say, 30 mil and we paid, let's say, £9.99 for it. Now there you go, it's worked out for us when we've clicked on that it's 0.333 pounds per milliliter. And we could add a note if we want to, but that's not really that important. So we can now either abort this if we don't want to save it, which actually we do. So let's just close it. Let's open up our stock table, whiz all the way down to the bottom, and we should see the last row being fruit circles, stock order 19, which it worked out itself, the date it's put in itself, the supplier that we put in, man, how much we bought, 30, we haven't used any. Quantity remaining is still at 0, so we need to add something that's going to update that when we have restocked, because the remaining quantity should be 30 if that is 0. It's got the stock price in and it saved the stock price per unit, and it's got a note. Everything else is irrelevant for a restock. So the only thing left to be done is to make sure that it updates the remaining stock quantity to be whatever the purchase quantity is, because it's the same at this stage. So I'm going to do that and I'll get back to you. Right, so what I've done is I've done a bit of a sneaky one here. Basically I've put in a field tied to the stock or remaining quantity field in the table down at the bottom here, and I've made it, where is it, invisible, visibility no. So it won't show up, but we can put data in there and it will get stored into that position in the table. All we need to do then is to update the after update handler on the purchase quantity, like so, where we already had one, which was just calling our little subroutine down here we did earlier. But before that, it's just going to take the value that's in the purchase quantity and put it in the remaining quantity. So when this is all saved, they're both going to be the same. So let's close this, give it a bit of a test. Yeah, we'll save it. Let's pick something very different. Restock. That'll be different. Let's restock this. Let's say that we are we've just bought 100 ml of it at £1. That's very cheap, and it's cost us 0.01 pounds per milliliter. Stock note, child, this time around. And we won't abort it, we'll close it. We'll open up the stock panel, go all the way down to the bottom. We can see our red Aster has been added, 100 ml, and the remaining quantity is now 100 ml. Everything else is, yeah, well, it was already working anyway. So that will do for today. That is essentially the Restock form kind of done. Watching paint dry would be more interesting.